In 2034, what will be the number one reason that people doubt the truth of Christianity?
I don't know what the number one reason will be in 2025.
Come on, you gotta tell us.
You know what? The same reason in 2034 will be the same reason in 34. Evil and suffering and pain. Now, sometimes that's the hypocrisy of a Christian that causes it. Sometimes it's pain that people experience personally, the hiddenness of God. All those are variations of suffering and pain. So 2034, 3034, if we're still here, I think that will be the main reason people doubt God.
I think the number one reason 10 years from now is because they might actually not even understand the concept of truth in the first place. I think we're experiencing right now a cultural shift in the West, and it's seeping into other parts of the world where we're sort of almost running headlong into what Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin have called reality collapse. With AI and the ability to deep fake everything, with our willingness to trust computers because they say things, or even get lazy about our own critical thinking, coupled with other various ideologies that are out there that are challenging, and they're asking you to disbelieve what you see with your own eyes. I think one of the things that could be creeping up is this reality collapse, where truth as a category will be something that we thought was quaint. I'm not saying relativism. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you keep using the word truth. What are you talking about?
Yeah, wow.
That's what I think is something that might happen in the next 10 years.
You know, as I kind of look ahead, I do worry that Christians are struggling, and I would say particularly evangelical Christians, are struggling to give a united vision of the fullness of the Christian life. Where we do decent, actually, kind of segments of things. And I think outsiders see how disparate we've become as a whole. And so the question I think we have to wrestle with is, how are we reintegrating the fullness of the Christian life with academic questions, with worship, with evangelism and mission. And I think particularly what's coming down the chain are questions about personhood. What does it mean to be a person? And that's going to include, like, what does it mean to be a gendered person? That's going to include, like, all sorts of things about sexual orientation. But, like, all those questions are wrapped. I think all the hot button questions for our day are wrapped up around the question of personhood. AI is directly related to this, and just technology in general. And so I think we're going to have an integrated vision of personhood that can speak profoundly and meaningfully into these things, and into them, therefore, like, what are these technologies doing to us, and what is a Christian kind of response towards being fully human ultimately?
I think that where we're headed is a lot of people aren't worried about the truth question as much as the goodness and the beauty question. I do wonder, so 2034, kind of, that's a pretty specific number. Since these things act as these pendulum sweeps, I do wonder, I think I get just the sense that we're starting to ask the truth question again. And so I wonder if it might swing back to that sort of wondering truly about the truth. But I think things like problem of evil, if we knew God was there and we knew God had his purposes and so on, then suffering wouldn't be so much of a problem. But it's really that hiddenness piece to it. And then asking that question of just, why isn't God more obvious? I mean, with the sort of like pitch that, man, I'd believe, if I'm an atheist or whatever, I'd believe if he was just a bit more obvious. Well, I think problem of evil punches that way too, but I think these are going to be the problems that people continue to perennially to struggle with.
If you go back like 10 years, 15 years, like in Islam, for instance, Islam is proven true by the scientific miracles of the Quran and by the perfect preservation of the Quran, by all these things. These have all been debunked. You still find like popular level Muslims who believe these things, but even at like the Dawah level, they don't use these arguments anymore. They know they've been destroyed. And I keep wondering, like, what is your argument going to be? And when someone says, hey, I'm going to present a case for why Muhammad is a true prophet, I'm legitimately interested, because I have no clue what you're going to argue. Everything you've argued for these past few decades, you guys now acknowledge that these were bogus. So I don't even know what your arguments are going to be. But what I think is going to happen is different worldviews that can't defend their position, they're going to become kind of like gangs, in the sense that you're not joining because you have all these good reasons to think that your gang is true. It's just a kind of protection. And so you need something to protect you from other elements in the world and so on. So I think that the world is going to become, and we see people clicking up, becoming more divided, more polarized. I think that in the future, objections against Christianity are going to be increasingly a result of this is what our group says and your group is saying something different. You can't question your group because that's like your safety in the world, being part of this group. I think 2034, it's all going to be Christianity is false because it's not our group. And that's going to be the extent of it.
Probably still to do with many of the things that motivate us now. I think maybe a misperception of what God is like. That only seems to be growing for a lot of people, particularly as maybe the negative parts of Scripture or the parts that are really open to misrepresent what God is like, if they're caricatured, those seem to be platformed really big right now. So the question is God good? Yeah. Even if God existed, I wouldn't want to worship him. I think that's probably only going to continually move forward. And that doubt of, okay, is God real? Do I trust him? They're the two big things that'll be there.
Evangelistically, I have typically seen people try to evangelize by saying, look at my life, look at what God's done here, look how I'm happy, my family's together, and if you become a Christian, you get this. Well, one, that's not the gospel. Two, you are making yourself the standard for their conversion, if you will.
Yeah.
So the moment you mess up, then in their mind, okay, now you leave. So I think it shouldn't even be an issue to begin with, and I think if we can change the way we evangelize in that way, that would help. So I don't think that's gonna, hopefully that won't be the case, and if it is, I like to tell people, Christians who don't follow the teachings of Christ, do we blame Christianity or Jesus, or say they're just not applying them, right? Historically, some people have left the church because they haven't had their questions taken seriously. They didn't feel the church was a safe place to ask questions. They didn't feel that the church was taking ideas seriously. We stopped becoming a contender of the philosophy, of the sphere of influence of ideas. And I think we have allowed ourselves to become irrelevant in that sense, too, because ministry is not just behind the pulpit, because we need good Christian ambassadors in every area of culture.
And we need people that are familiar with apologetics. So
that's right.
You should like and subscribe.